A very good morning to you all. You're watching World News and I'm your host, Klaudia Czerwińska. EU justice ministers will gather in Warsaw, Poland on Friday to discuss challenges to the rule of law and their impact on the principle of mutual trust between EU and member states. Polish Justice Minister Adam Bodnar will be in attendance. EU justice ministers will discuss ways to strengthen enforcement of sanctions on Russia, particularly expanding the role of the bloc's prosecutor. They will also discuss possible further EU sanctions on gathering evidence on Russian war crimes in Ukraine. The gathering on Friday follows Thursday's meeting of interior ministers who discussed migration and security. We are operational in Poland, said European Chief Prosecutor Laura Kodruta-Kowesi during an interview with TVP World. This comes after Poland officially joined the European Public Prosecutor's Office in March of 2024, following a proposal by Adam Bodnar in December of 2023, shortly after he had become Poland's Minister of Justice.
I think the most important achievement is that the EPPO zone now it's enlarged, and I think this is also a big achievement for Poland, because with EPPO, everything will be safer, faster, and more efficient. And I think the Polish citizens will be more protected, because I have been a prosecutor for more than 30 years, and I learned one thing, that the security starts in the street. And nothing is more important than security of the citizens. And what EPPO is doing, one of the main scope of us and one of the main enemies of us is the organized criminal groups. And I learned that there is no clean country, and Poland is not protected from this perspective. And we already saw this in our activity in EPPO, because in the last 3 years in our investigations, we saw connections, for example, with VAT carousel fraud. But behind VAT carousel fraud, all the time, there are very, very serious criminal organized groups involved, very bad people, bad criminals, very violent. So I think this is a good news for the citizens of Poland.
Freezing aid has significant consequences. President Donald Trump's decision to halt development assistance presents major difficulties to Ukrainian communities already exhausted by 3 years of war. President Zelensky instructed that certain key initiatives be financed through domestic resources and European partners be engaged in additional discussions. TVP World's Kyiv correspondent Oz Kataji has this report.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky acknowledged late on Wednesday night that Donald Trump's decision to halt U.S. foreign aid funding for 90 days has impacted some Ukrainian programs in the fields of energy, border security, humanitarian and development sectors have been impacted by this. Now, President Zelensky said that he was looking to domestic sources to try and meet that shortfall, but also appealing to European partners to try and help fund those vital programs. Let's take a listen to what President Zelensky had to say earlier.
Today, there was an initial report from government officials and the office team regarding critically important programs that are currently suspended but were previously funded by US support. I have already instructed that certain key initiatives be financed through our internal resources, as well as to engage in discussions with our European partners. Energy sector, programs for distributed generation and community resilience, veteran projects, veteran hubs, support lines, and assistance in launching businesses. Border crossing points, modernization for faster economic activity and more transparent customs operations, including projects in ports to strengthen economic security. We are also addressing key issues in healthcare and cybersecurity. Additionally, I have instructed that the audit of suspended US assistance programs continue, particularly in the humanitarian, security and social sectors. This is where our and Europe's efforts must be intensified to ensure that while the US formulates its new policy, we continue to support our people.
The energy sector in particular is going to be of concern to Ukraine, hoping that they can get European funding secured to try and stabilize Ukraine's energy grid. Now, elsewhere in Ukraine, a multi-story building was hit by a Russian Shahed drone in Sumy, the Sumy region, killing 9 people and injuring 13. So another dark day here in Ukraine. It's been Oz Chatterjee reporting from Kyiv for TVP World.
During the Senate confirmation hearing of candidate for Intelligence Director Tulsi Gabbard, she was questioned about her opinions on the war in Ukraine. Senator Michael Bennett from the Democratic Party said during the hearing that some of Gabbard's previous statements align with Russian propaganda.
Moment that Russian tanks were rolling across the peaceful border of Ukraine for the first time, you tweeted at 11:30 p.m. your time, "This war and suffering could have easily been avoided if Biden administration / NATO had simply acknowledged Russia's legitimate security concerns regarding Ukraine's becoming a member of NATO." Did you say that, yes or no?
I believe you're reading my tweet, Senator.
Yes is the answer. We're the Senate. We get to decide whether we're going to confirm this nominee. Obviously, we didn't select this nominee. But can't we do better than somebody who doesn't believe in 702? Can't we believe that somebody who can't answer whether Snowden was a traitor 5 times today, who made excuses for Vladimir Putin's invasion of Ukraine, the first time that I'm aware of any American official has done that? I'm questioning her judgment. That's the issue that's at stake here.
Terrorism cannot be left unpunished, said Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, commenting on Russia's missile strike on the city of Sumy in Ukraine's northeast. He also called on the international community to continue their support for Ukraine as a response to Russia's attacks on the civilian population.
Every hour, there are updates on the situation in Sumy, where work is still ongoing at the site of the Russian Shahid strike. A regular residential building has been destroyed. 9 people have been killed. My condolences to their families. 13 people have been injured, including a child. All necessary assistance is being provided. I want to thank each rescuer, each medical worker, and all the police officers who are helping. This is already a typical signature move of Russia, destroying the lives of many families, an entire building. Every such Russian strike requires a response from the world. Terrorism cannot be left unpunished. The most effective response is to support our people, our state. We must maintain pressure on Russia and not fall for Moscow's manipulations, whether political or in the media. We need to force Russia into peace. The cause of this war lies with Russia.
Nearly 1.2 billion euros in military aid to Ukraine. That's the largest support package Stockholm has pledged to the war-torn country since the full-scale Russian invasion almost 3 years ago. The country also aims to further bolster Moldova with financial aid.
In this package, we are also financing Ukrainian investments in long-range systems, both long-range drones and long-range missiles, which they have requested. It is not only Ukraine that is in a very vulnerable position, but also Moldova. Moldova has relatively recently gone through an election and is exposed to various types of destabilization operations by Russia. There is a great need for both civilian and military support, not least to build a stronger resilience against these hybrid operations. What we are also seeking parliamentary authorization for in this bill is that we should be able to donate armored shells to Moldova to a value of 13 million.
On Friday morning, the Polish police attempted to bring former Justice Minister Zbigniew Ziobro in front of a parliamentary investigative committee, but he wasn't home. After Ziobro's repeated refusal to appear at the questioning, a court ordered that he be forcefully brought to the hearings and questioned in a case involving alleged spying on political opponents. The Pegasus Parliamentary Committee has its hearing today. It investigates allegations that the previous government used advanced spyware against its political opponents. Former Minister Zbigniew Ziobro is scheduled to be questioned. So far, it's unclear whether he will attend the hearing. Under the previous administration, Ziobro served as Poland's Justice Minister and Public Prosecutor General. For the second evening in a row, thousands of people gathered in front of the Christian Democratic Union Party headquarters in Berlin on Thursday. People in Berlin and other large cities in Germany have been protesting the recent Bundestag partnership between the CDU, SCU and the far-right Alternative for Germany to pass stricter immigration measures. The CDU had asked employees of its federal headquarters to leave the building earlier as a precaution before the demonstration started. According to the Berlin police, 4,000 people were registered to participate in the march in the German capital, and an additional 2,000 more attended the protests. Demonstrations also took place in cities like Munich, Dortmund, Dresden and Hanover. The last one saw 7,000 Germans gathered in a peaceful protest supported by the SPD and the Green parties. Commenting from the Oval Office on Thursday, Donald Trump announced that his decision on tariffs for Canada and Mexico might be taken in a couple of hours. Apart from stating that he will put 25% tariffs on Canada and Mexico, Trump added it is not certain the rate won't rise with time.
We'll be announcing the tariffs on Canada and Mexico for a number of reasons. Number one is the people that have poured into our country so horribly and so much. Number two are the drugs, fentanyl, and everything else that have come into the country. And number three are the massive subsidies that we're giving to Canada and to Mexico in the form of deficits. And I'll be putting the tariff of 25% on Canada and separately 25% on Mexico. And we will really have to do that because we have very big deficits with those countries. Those tariffs may or may not rise with time.
Black boxes from the American Airlines flight which crashed in Washington have been recovered. It is now believed that Wednesday's collision between a small U.S. jet and a military Black Hawk helicopter resulted in the death of 67 people aboard the commercial flight. So far, authorities have managed to recover over 40 bodies from the Potomac River. The National Transportation Safety Board, which is leading the probe into the collision, hopes to have preliminary findings ready within the next month. According to local authorities and President Donald Trump, there were no survivors in the deadliest plane crash in the Washington, D.C. area since 2001. Among those on board were American and Russian athletes from the Skating Club of Boston, including Yevgenia Shishakova and Vadim Naumov, 1994 world champions in pair figure skating. President Donald Trump implied on Thursday that federal diversity efforts were to blame for the plane crash in Washington. The investigation into one of the deadliest U.S. air disasters in recent history has just begun, and it is not yet clear why the American Airlines plane collided with a U.S. Army Black Hawk helicopter.
We do not know what led to this crash, but we have some very strong opinions and ideas, and I think we'll probably state those opinions now. Targeted disabilities are those disabilities that the federal government, as a matter of policy, has identified for special emphasis in recruitment and hiring. The FAA's website states they include hearing, vision, missing extremities, partial paralysis, complete paralysis, epilepsy, severe intellectual disability, psychiatric disability, and dwarfism all qualify for the position of a controller of airplanes pouring into our country, pouring into a little spot, a little dot on the map, a little runway. The initiative is part of the FAA's diversity and inclusion hiring plan. Think of that. The initiative is part of the FAA's diversity and inclusion hiring plan, which says diversity is integral to achieving FAA's mission of ensuring safe and efficient travel. I don't think so. I think it's just the opposite.
Israel has released 110 Palestinian prisoners in exchange for the release of 3 Israeli and 5 Thai hostages taken into Gaza during Hamas' October 7th attack. This comes after Israel delayed the release of the prisoners over concerns about chaotic scenes at one of the hostage handover points. Red Cross buses carrying prisoners arrived in Ramallah and other cities across the West Bank. Some among the released prisoners were previously sentenced to life in prison by Israel. Earlier, according to the local reports, Palestinians swarmed and shouted at the hostages released by Hamas. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said the sight of their handover was shocking and threatened death to anyone hurting hostages. He urged mediators to ensure the situation would not be repeated. And with that, we end our service, but please do stay tuned. We're back in just a moment with more news and features.